Hi, welcome to BA Brew. I'm Lisa.
I'm Corrine.
And I'm Philippa.
And we're here today, we'll be talking about what we're classing as self-assessment tools, aren't we? A variety of different tools that we've used in our careers to learn, I suppose, more about ourselves, perhaps more about our teams, and just learn what we can, I suppose, and just to make improvements, really. So, Corrine, you've had quite extensive experience. In fact, you both have. But your experience, Corrine, it's more about sort of from a coaching perspective. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I've come across a lot of the tools we're going to talk about today, but specifically since I've been coaching, I've been using 2 or 3 extensively. So one of those is a tool called Engage, which I've been using with individuals and teams going through fairly major change programs. And this tool comes from the work of a lady called Dr. Jodie Odell, she started it in her PhD research. And was looking at really what makes people engaged in change, what stops them getting engaged in change. And it looks at 3 elements. It looks at how confident we are in the change, both from self-confidence, so our self-awareness, self-belief, how confident we are about the task, because it's very situational, and this tool's very much about state of mind at a particular time, and about how confident we are in our social surroundings for that change program. Then it also talks about our openness, our willingness to change. That's about adaptability and very much about a growth mindset. So I know, Lisa, you're going to talk about the Matthew Syed growth mindset tool. So that really complements Engage at that point. And then the final part of Engage is it then measures how much impact you're having in your organization. So your performance levels, your emotional commitment, your willingness to stay.
Yeah.
It's very much a state-based tool. So I often will do it with the teams at the beginning of a program, and then I'll do some individual coaching or some team coaching, and they're obviously going through the change as well. And then we'll measure again, and it gives some really interesting results both for individuals and teams.
Brilliant. Yeah, so I was going to say, about 18 months ago, you did this for me. I did the
yeah.
And I found it really interesting, actually. Really quite. I liked it. It was just sort of 3 main dimensions, and quite straightforward. And I actually liked the fact that I think afterwards we had a bit of a catch up and a bit of a feedback session.
Yes.
It was really useful that there was quite a lot of different things to focus on, but I think you said just to focus on maybe 2 or 3 to begin with. And see how that worked. I found that really useful because it could have been a bit overwhelming. All that different feedback to sort of to work on at one time.
Yeah, there's a lot of information in it, which is why I'll always do a debrief with people, because it measures everything on a scale. So you can either be an inhibitor to scale, the growth scale, the accelerator. So inhibitor means basically there could be some limiting beliefs holding you back. Accelerator is things that are going well and to work on. But it can be, there's a lot of information, as a lot of these tools have, and it's about picking out a few key points.
Yeah. It's interesting how Engage as well, like you said earlier, that it can be used alongside other tools and they can complement one another. I've never watched that before with a self-assessment tool. That's really quite interesting. So, Philippa, you've also been involved with self-assessment tools for many years now on a global scale in terms of leadership development programs. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what tools you've used?
Yes. So in terms of leadership development programs, I've been working on them for over 20 years now. And the key first step in any development journey as a leader is in getting to understand yourself and your own personality preferences. So I've used various tools over the years, insights discovery, strength deployment, inventory. But MBTI, the Myers Briggs self-assessment tool, is the one that's most widely used in the corporate world. It was originally developed 20 years ago by 2 women. It was a mother and daughter team, Catherine Briggs and Isabel Myers. And interestingly, it was originally introduced as a tool to help women entering the workforce know what type of roles suited their personalities.
I didn't know.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. They weren't psychologists. They were just very interested in the topic and did a lot of research on Carl Jung and his theories. So it is based in Jungian psychology. And MBTI assesses your personality preferences across what's known as dichotomies, so 4 pairs of opposites: extroversion and introversion, which determines where you get your energy from as a person. Sensing and intuition, which measures how you process information, whether you focus on your 5 senses or whether you prefer a more abstract approach, theories, sort of debates, etc., to arrive at your interpretation of the information that you're being presented with. Thinking and feeling is the 3rd dichotomy, which attempts to define how you like to make decisions. So for thinking, do you make decisions based on fact, or do you make them based on your gut feeling? So it's a head versus heart, if you like, dichotomy. And finally, judging and perceiving, which relates to how you like to organize your world or not. So people who have a judging preference like structure and order, whereas those on the perceiving end of the spectrum prefer much more flexibility and spontaneity. So yes, it's an assessment tool that can be useful for people who are looking to develop their leadership skills, and maybe also for those who are working in their teams, so they understand better the team's preferences. Ultimately, it's aimed at knowing yourself and enabling you to work with other people better. That's basically it in a nutshell. And more than 2 million people a year complete a Myers Briggs self-assessment.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is very widely used. There are drawbacks to it though, which we can discuss later in the brew.
No, that's great. I think we all know. I think everyone who's done it. You always remember your 4 letters, don't you? You always remember the extrovert, introvert, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I'm ESTJ.
Oh, excellent.
So, yes.
So, yeah,
it's amazing how we remember them, isn't it?
Yeah. I've done it about 3 times now as well. And I remember the first time I did it, I was ESTJ. Then I was ESTJ, but I was more extrovert a few years later. Because it's on a bit of a scale, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Dichotomies, like you said. But then I did it more recently. I think it changed to ESFJ. I thought, that's strange. So it makes you wonder, obviously, even as people, we change over time, don't we? And that's kind of what you were saying earlier, Corrine, wasn't it? About starting it in a point in time and then doing it again later and then just seeing what the differences are, what difference it's made.
Yeah, I think one of the key things, Philip is saying that it's about a preference, and we do have preferences, and we can shift and we can work in a different preference in a different situation. But the Myers-Briggs gives us a self-awareness to know that actually the bit where we're, I suppose, most comfortable, the bit where we come back to who we really are, is probably what it's shown us. But we can shift up and down.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But when you know your 4 letters as well, you do tend to, if you can find like a write-up, a small write-up about each one, can't you? And it's quite shocking just how accurate it is, really.
I think it is having done it myself and worked with people who have done it in a personal development context. I think it is pretty accurate. There are drawbacks to it though, which can be people tend to focus on those 4 letters, so pigeonhole themselves and others. And I have seen it used with people who shall be nameless, where they say, well, I'm ENFP, you're an ISTJ, I won't get along with you, so I'm not going to bother trying.
And that's such a shame, because difference is what brings us together to make a really powerful team.
Absolutely.
the results, isn't it? It's quite strange.
If you have time, I can share a story about when I did mine. So I'm very high on N, but being an analyst and being very logical, I thought I'd be an S. And I challenged the result when it came out, and the person doing it with me said, well, let's just do some exercises and we'll feel. And he did an exercise between the N and the S, and I was so different to all the others. And it was very clear. But I then since realized this gave me the self-awareness to realize, well, I'd hold myself back sometimes because I'd often see things differently and think I was doing it wrong, and it impacted my confidence. And now I realize that my N, sort of intuition rather than sensing, just gives me a different perspective.
Really interesting.
So it is fascinating.
Yeah, I like the way they've followed up as well, and actually got exercises to look at those, those elements and say, well, no, you really are.
Yeah, we were looking at a picture, and some of the others in the room who had an S preference were talking about the detail in the picture, and I was taking concepts and making stories out of these concepts. So I don't know a huge amount about it, but it was clear that I had a different way of thinking.
A different way of looking at the world, which when you come to some of the work we do in business analysis and certainly service design, that different way of looking at the world can be such an important quality to have in a team.
Yeah,
in terms of the results or the solutions that you're working on for your customers.
Great stuff.
And I think it leads me on to make a point about using these self-assessment tools for recruitment purposes. An important thing to note is none of them are good predictors of how well a person is going to perform in a job. And I think that that's a really important thing to understand. My belief is that the self-assessment tools are personal development tools. They're to aid your training, your development, and your performance. What they're not, as I said, an indicator of is how well you're actually going to perform in a particular role. And I have seen in the past some not very good decisions made based on the use of self-assessment tools in the recruitment process. So one of the dangers, particularly, for example, if you're a sales manager, you're going to be high on extroversion, probably, if we refer to the Myers Briggs indicator, and you end up with a team who are all extroverts or high on the extroversion scale. And just recruiting a whole team who have the same personality preferences doesn't actually make for a strong team. What you're looking for as a manager is balance, because different preferences perform well in different situations. And there could be that particular major client who actually it would work better with somebody who's lower on the extroversion scale, but maybe higher on the intuition scale. So it kind of marries with what Corrine was just talking about, a different way of looking at the world. It's getting under the skin of the self-assessment result, diving in a little bit more deeply and understanding sort of, the pros and cons of each of the preferences, which is often skimmed over, I think, in my experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I suppose if it's used well, fantastic tools, aren't they? Great tools. And how about yourself, Corrine? Have you used any others? So you mentioned Engage, didn't you?
Yeah. So listening to Philippa talking, because I think they are preferences. I use, particularly in my coaching, a tool called Strengths Profile. There's lots and lots of different strengths tools out there. I mean, Philippa's just mentioned Strengths Deployment Inventory, which is one. There's StrengthsFinder from Gallup, which is very much organizational based. It's about your strengths in the organization. But I like Strengths Profile. And this has come from the work of Dr. Alex Linley and in the positive psychology. area, and he's worked over. Well, he started setting the tool up in about 2005 after many years of research, and this tool, it basically looks at 60 different strengths, but it helps you assess what your realized strengths are, your unrealized strengths, your learned behaviors, and your weaknesses. And Alex Linley saying that our strengths really are, only about a third of us know what our strengths are. And they are the things that we do well. And if it's a true strength, it will energize us. And we'll often use it. And when it comes to learned behaviors on the strengths profile, so we can be good at something because we've learned to do it, but does it energize us or does it drain us? And the difference is, if it's a strength, it will energize us. So if you've ever had a day when you've been doing something and time flies by and you feel that you've got a buzz, you're using a true strength. And these things can move around, and unrealized strengths are things that we're good at and they energize us, but we don't use them very often, and perhaps we don't know they're our strengths. And these can move around, we can build on our strengths. So I think the power of this one, and what I like about it, is the fact that you can see, what are my strengths? What are my learned behaviors? So is my role, meaning I'm using a lot of learned behaviors, do I get burnt out a lot? Do I feel quite stressed a lot? Have I got the right balance? And with strengths, it's all about balance. We can overplay strengths and have blind spots. We may not know what our strengths are either. So I think it's a fascinating tool. And as with the others, it's a start point for a conversation. It's all about self-awareness.
That's really interesting to hear. That tool isn't one that I know myself. I think the strength deployment inventory also seeks to identify your strengths. But what it also does is it looks at them in the normal run, business as usual, everyday situation, and then it looks at them in a conflict situation. And that conflict situation can cause people to shift. You talked in your talking about the StrengthsFinder, then is preferences can shift. And I think the SDI tool has quite a neat way of highlighting that, because people often behave quite differently in conflict to how they do, when it's just a business as usual situation. The other thing the SDI does is that strengths, it says, can become weaknesses if they're overused or misapplied. And that's an interesting dimension to it. I don't know what your thoughts might be on that.
Yeah, and I think his strengths profile talks about overused strengths, and he talks about finding the golden mean, to the right balance. It sounds like they're using a similar language,
or similar
thing. Yeah,
definitely.
And I really liked it, because I know there was a brew a few months back, and maybe in the last series, about job crafting. And I think, if we're aware of our strengths, we can start thinking about crafting a job to play to our strengths. And as a team, working out who best in the team is good to do different things. And I think when you think about business analysis, if you've got a really good attention to detail, you're probably really good at pulling out and listing lots of detailed requirements. If you're more creative, big picture view, you might be better at scoping and shaping.
Yeah.
So lots of opportunities.
So we talked a little bit about, I think you mentioned growth mindset earlier, Corrine.
Yeah, because I think with Engage talks about flexibility, adaptability, and I think the growth mindset tool from Matthew Syed can really complement that. So again, it helps you build together, well, how can I have a bit more of a growth mindset? And I know, Lisa, you know a lot more about this tool than I do.
Well, so Assist, like I say, we have like a partnership with Matthew Syed Consulting, and they've got a tool called Mindset Advantage, which is the class. It's like a diagnostic tool, so it's a similar kind of thing. And you can have individual reports, you can have team ones, and even organisational sort of dimensions to look at that can help you, on each three of those bases. But yeah, so they look at three. I think there's nine dimensions in three groups. There's the resilience mindset, learning mindset and the innovation mindset. It's really fascinating stuff. But I just love the idea of the growth mindset. You know, it's kind of the opposite to the fixed mindset where if you're not good at it today, you'll never be good at something. You know, but actually it's the complete opposite of that, where we believe that, you know, with purposeful practice, we can get better at something. We really can move towards, you know, may not be wonderfully talented at it, you know, naturally, but you can always work towards getting better at something. Yeah. So that's fair.
I think it probably complements a lot of the other things we've been talking about. A lot of these tools give us information, and a lot of them talk about having a development plan and things like that. So you can pull out the information that's useful at anything you're working on at any point of time.
So yeah, I'd use that on
the worst.
I'm sure.
The worst thing with all these assessment tools is you get the report, you read it, you think, oh, that's interesting, and you put it on your shelf, and nothing is ever done with the information that you're provided with. It's an absolute gold mine, I think, to help you work on your relationships with others and really understand. Perhaps, Corrine, you mentioned job crafting. Is really making sure that the career path that you're committing to is the right one for you, is going to be a catalyst to, you know, help you really sort of shine in your chosen career. Because sometimes we find ourselves in jobs that are really not playing to our strengths and to our preferences, and a lot of unhappiness can ensue. So part of your journey of self-discovery when you do these assessment tools is looking at, okay, if it's not the job I'm in currently isn't quite hitting the mark, what work environment could work better for me? So yeah, I think that's a really important aspect to the self-assessment tools. But my advice would be make sure if you do one of them is do something with the information.
Great tips. Wonderful. Thank you both, and thank you all for watching. If you've got any ideas for future BA Brew podcasts, please let us know at babrew@assiskd.com, and please do like, share and subscribe. Thank you.